Imagine this scenario for a second. You get invited to an adult sleepover with some of the other parents from your kid's football league.
Right. Sounds pretty standard.
Yeah, exactly. It's a birthday watch party. You're looking to unwind, so you bring along a bottle of tequila. You put on your absolute favorite, most comfortable onesie. This one happens to have a white dog print all over it.
I mean, who doesn't love a good onesie for a sleepover?
Right. So you settle in for a night of watching SEC football, having some drinks, playing Cards Against Humanity. It sounds like a completely normal, fun weekend in the suburbs.
Right up until it isn't.
Exactly. Because the next morning, you were found dead in the backyard. And the conflicting stories of what exactly happened to you between 2 a.m. and sunrise, well, they ignite a national firestorm.
It honestly sounds like the inciting incident of a thriller novel, but this is an entirely real case. It left a family shattered and an entire community violently divided over what constitutes the truth.
We are looking at the tragic and highly controversial death of Tamla Horsford. She was a 40-year-old black mother of 5 who died on November 4, 2018 in Cumming, Georgia.
So let's jump right into the night of November 3rd, 2018. The setup is pretty straightforward. A woman named Jean Myers is hosting a joint birthday and college football watch party at her home.
And the guests are mostly moms who know each other through a youth football league, right?
Yeah, and Jean invited them to sleep over so nobody would be drinking and driving. Tamla arrives a little later than the rest of the group, around 8:30 p.m., wearing that white dog print onesie.
And based on the police interviews in our sources, the atmosphere was completely festive. They were watching the LSU versus Alabama game.
Right, and Tamla had brought that bottle of tequila as a gift. But the host wasn't a fan of tequila, so Tamla ended up drinking it herself, mixing it with water or Mountain Dew throughout the night.
Sounds like a pretty typical party. They even played Cards Against Humanity later on.
They did. Now, the reports also make a point to note that Tamla was the only smoker at the party, so she frequently stepped out onto the home's back balcony to have a cigarette.
And this balcony is crucial to everything that follows. Paint a picture of this house for us.
Yeah.
Because honestly, a first-floor balcony doesn't usually sound that dangerous.
It doesn't, no. But the architecture of the house is really deceptive. The deck was attached to the main floor of the house, but because the property was built on a really steep slope with a walkout basement level, the back balcony was actually suspended 14 feet off the ground.
Wow, okay, 14 feet is significant.
It's a huge drop. So as the night goes on, the party starts to wind down. Some guests who weren't spending the night head home. Others go to bed.
But Tamla stays up.
Yeah, by all accounts, Tamla was a highly social, vibrant person, and she wanted to keep hanging out, so she stays in the living room while everyone else retreats to their rooms.
I love cases where there is a digital footprint because it takes out so much of the human guesswork. And here we actually have a timeline dictated by the house itself.
Yes, the smart home data.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Jean had a smart door security system that sent timestamp notifications to her phone whenever a door was opened and closed.
And that digital footprint creates a very rigid timeline that the physical evidence later has to fit into. So according to the data pulled from that security system, Jean and her boyfriend, Jose Barrera, went to bed at 1:30 a.m.
Okay, 1:30 a.m.
Right. Then a few minutes later at 1:47 a.m., a guest named Bridget Fuller leaves the house, triggering the front door sensor.
Makes sense.
Just 2 minutes after that, at 1:49 a.m., the back door leading to that 14-foot balcony opens. It closes at 1:50 a.m.
So someone goes out and comes right back in.
Exactly. But then at 1:57 a.m., that same back door opens again, but this time
It never closes.
it is never closed.
So from 1:57 a.m. onward, the door to a balcony suspended over a dark sloped yard is just sitting wide open.
Fast forward to the next morning, 8:45 a.m., Jean's aunt, Madeline Lombardi, who also lives at the house, goes to the kitchen for coffee.
And that's when she sees her.
She looks out the window and sees Tamla lying completely motionless, face down in the backyard. She panics, runs upstairs to wake up Jean and Jose.
Which leads to the 911 call.
Right, placed by Jose Barrera at 8:59 a.m.
But the details of this call are incredibly unsettling, aren't they?
Very. He tells the dispatcher she's stiff and not breathing, but then he also mentions a small cut on her wrist and actually suggests it might be self-inflicted.
Wait, while she is lying face down in the yard, he thinks a cut on her wrist is the cause. How did the responding officers even react to that?
Well, the initial reaction, or rather the lack of a reaction, is what fueled so much of the public outrage later on. During that 911 call, you can hear Jean in the background saying something like, "She was drinking and it looks like, I'm guessing maybe she fell off the balcony."
So the narrative of an accidental fall was planted before police even arrived.
established immediately. And crucially, emergency medical services, EMS, they were called off before they even got there.
They called off EMS.
Yes, when the police get there at 9:07 a.m., no one, not the partygoers, not the responding officers, attempts CPR. A responding deputy simply touches her leg, declares her deceased, and locks down the scene.
A 14-foot fall onto grass and landscaping is going to do some serious damage. I mean, clearly.
Yeah.
But what actually caused her death according to the state? Because just being heavily intoxicated doesn't kill you from falling a few feet.
So Tamla's body was sent to the GBI, where Dr. Andrew Koopmeiners conducted the official autopsy. The post-mortem toxicology report showed that Tamla had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.238.
0.238. To put that in perspective for you listening, that is nearly 3 times the legal driving limit in the state of Georgia.
It's very high. The screening also found traces of THC from marijuana and alprazolam, which is the anti-anxiety medication's Xanax.
And what about the physical injuries?
The official GBI autopsy documented massive, catastrophic trauma. She suffered a fractured second cervical vertebra, essentially, a broken neck.
Oh my.
She also had severe subarachnoid and subdural hemorrhages.
Which basically means massive bleeding in the spaces between her brain and her skull, right?
Yeah.
Putting lethal pressure on the brain itself.
Exactly. And strikingly, she also had a 3/4-inch laceration to the right ventricle of her heart.
With a tear in her heart. You usually see that kind of cardiac tearing in, like high-speed car crashes when someone hits a steering wheel, not from a fall off a residential deck.
It is a severe deceleration injury, yeah. But the GBI concluded it was consistent with the impact of the fall. Her right wrist was also severely fractured and dislocated, almost as if she had tried to brace herself upon landing.
Okay, that makes sense if she fell.
Furthermore, she had cuts on her shins. Investigators noted that these shin cuts perfectly matched the profile of the metal landscape edging in the yard right where she landed.
So based on all that, the toxicology and the injuries, the GBI officially ruled the manner of death as an accident, caused by multiple blunt force injuries from a 14-foot fall.
Right. The working theory from the sheriff's office was that she leaned over the railing, maybe to drop a cigarette, or because she felt sick, lost her balance due to the extreme intoxication, and just toppled over.
But Tamla's family didn't buy that narrative for a single second. Her husband went on record stating that Tamla was an incredibly responsible woman who would never show up to a party with people she didn't know intimately and get so sloppy drunk that she'd fall over a waist-high railing.
And that's why the family hired their own forensic pathologist, Dr. Adele Shaker, to conduct a completely independent second autopsy.
And the findings from that second look point out a massive, glaring medical discrepancy.
A huge one. Dr. Shaker noted that despite the catastrophic brain bleeds and the snapped neck, there were absolutely no significant injuries to the bones of her skull.
Which makes no sense. The family's attorney and their independent medical experts raised a deeply logical question that really resonated with the public. How does a person fall 14 feet, land hard enough to suffer massive brain hemorrhaging, and snap their neck, but not fracture their skull?
It's incredibly improbable, and that physical impossibility, or at least high improbability, cracked the case wide open for internet sleuths. When you dive into the sources detailing the inconsistencies, the crime scene itself is just a mess of red flags.
Let's look at her body position, for instance. Jose Barrera told the 911 dispatcher she was face down. Jean Myers told police, quote, she was face down, but her arms were down like she just face planted. By her side, palms up.
But the crime scene photos tell a completely different story.
Yeah. In the photos, Tamla's left arm is out to the side, bent at an obtuse angle with her fingers curled under.
And if we connect that body positioning to the bigger picture of her injuries, the family's lawyer argued a really compelling point. If she had braced her fall with her hands, which would perfectly explain the severely dislocated right wrist, why were there no bracing injuries on her face?
Right. If she face-planted hard enough to break her neck, her face should have borne the brunt of the impact. Yet her facial injuries were relatively minor abrasions.
It suggested to the family that the injuries simply didn't match the final resting position of the body.
Then there is the issue of the security cameras. Jean Myers initially claimed to have security camera footage of the incident, but later she told police the batteries in the cameras were dead. She even provided proof of the dead batteries to the police.
Isn't it amazing how smart home technology works flawlessly all year to tell you when a package is delivered, but the exact moment a tragedy happens, the batteries miraculously decide to die?
It's undeniably convenient.
Yep.
And it feeds directly into a broader issue this case highlights. This investigation is a masterclass in the concept of the golden hour in policing.
Oh, absolutely. The first 60 minutes of a crime scene dictate everything. If you don't secure the digital footprint and the physical evidence immediately, you don't just lose data, you lose the public's trust forever.
And according to the investigative reports, the initial response by the Forsyth County Sheriff's deputies failed completely in this regard. They did not secure the cell phones of the party guests, they didn't subpoena the devices or download the data that morning.
Which means the people inside that house had hours, if not days, to manage their digital trails.
Precisely. By the time the GBI later stepped in to review the case, it was discovered that at least 2 of the party-goers had purchased entirely new phones.
New phones.
Yeah. And text messages and photos from the night of the party on other devices had been deleted.
And to make matters worse regarding the physical evidence, the initial autopsy did not include taking fingernail clippings from Tamla to analyze for DNA. That is standard procedure if any sort of physical struggle is suspected.
But because the scene was immediately treated as an accident, that evidence was just lost to the wind.
And if deleted texts and dead camera batteries weren't enough to pour gasoline on the fire of suspicion, let's introduce the Jose Beretta factor.
Right. Jose is Jean's boyfriend, the one who found the body and called 911.
At the time of the party, Jose actually worked as a pretrial officer in the Forsyth County court system.
And in December of 2018, just a month after Tamla's death, he was placed on administrative leave and subsequently fired.
Do you know why? He used his official law enforcement terminal to internally access the incident reports regarding Tamla's death.
He claimed to his superiors that it was just curiosity, right? And that the information was technically public record anyway.
Yeah, but the court system stated it violated their trust and terminated him. For the public following this case, a law enforcement insider accessing the files of an investigation where he is a central witness wasn't just a breach of protocol.
It was viewed as a massive conflict of interest. And honestly, the clearest sign yet of a potential coordinated cover-up.
We have missing texts, conveniently dead camera batteries, an unfractured skull, and a fired court officer. That alone fuels a true crime frenzy.
But the absolute elephant in the room, the reason this case transcended true crime forums and became a national news story, is the socio-political context deeply outlined in our sources.
We have to talk about it. Tamla was the only Black woman at a party with white guests, located in Forsyth County, Georgia.
And as highlighted heavily by the True Crime podcast source, Forsyth County has a notoriously racist history that really cannot be separated from this narrative.
Right. In 1912, the county was the site of a horrific racial cleansing. Following allegations against a few Black men, mob violence erupted, and virtually all of the county's Black residents, we're talking over 1,000 people, were terrorized, violently driven out of their homes, and forced to flee the county.
And for decades following that event, it was known as a sundown town where Black people were implicitly and explicitly not welcome.
While the demographics have certainly shifted over the last century, that profound historical trauma casts a very long shadow over any interaction between Black citizens and law enforcement in that area.
And against that brutal historical backdrop, allegations of police bias began to surface almost immediately. According to the 11 Alive news source, Tamla's family accused lead investigator, Michael Christian, of using derogatory language,
Specifically alleging that he casually referred to Tamla as the porch lady during the investigation.
which is just awful. When a local police department completely botches the first 60 minutes of a crime scene, does the absence of evidence become the most compelling evidence of all?
It really forces you to ask if we are projecting massive conspiracies onto situations that are actually just governed by human incompetence.
No. We'd rather believe in a highly coordinated cover-up than accept that the people in charge simply didn't know what they were doing. Something to really think about. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.